To JBI agent Masayuki Sakamoto, these questions are not the subject of speculation. Gunhead.
It's the final production model!
Asian cinema redefined.
Hello all, my name is Jacob Christensen, and this is Basement Resident, the show where we look at 3 strange stories right out of Asian cinema. Before we get started though, in celebration of this being the first episode of the 2nd season of this show, I have smeared yellow stuff all over my walls. I don't know what that stuff is, but it doesn't smell good. And with that, I've decided to start us off with something a little bit familiar. That's right, it's more Tales of Terror, but this time it's Tales of Terror, the show. But before we get into our first story, I want to talk about the show in general. So originally when I was going through the Tales of Terror movie, I thought either the show came out first and then the movie, or the movie came out first and then the show. But what I learned is the show ran from 2003 to 2005, and the movie came out in 2004. That's right, the movie came out while the show was airing. In addition to that, most of these stories in the show, if not all the stories in the show, are only 5 minutes long, which you might count it against it and say that that's a bad thing, but I think this show, unlike the movie which was trying to tell stories, I think this show is just trying to get ideas and concepts across to you, and serves more of a purpose of a way to inspire you of different new ways you can be afraid. That being said, let's see how it does with its first story, Elevator. We open with our main character Heather and her fiancé Dwayne making out in a Nissan with a man on the radio bragging about how much more money the politicians have lost this year over last year. But Heather gets over that and decides that it's about time that she goes home, but not before reminding her fiancé on how incompetent he is. I'm not kidding, she actually does that. In her defense, she is trying to get her fiancé to show up to their wedding recital on time. Actually, I lied. I don't know any of that. A matter of fact, once again, the show hasn't explained who the characters are, what they're doing, or what they're talking about. And I'm left here, all alone, trying to put together the dots, like some sad dot-connecting crab. But Heather doesn't care. She hears wedding bells all the way back to her apartment. She is literally skipping with joy. I'm not lying, look.
Dun, 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 dun.
Heather gets to the apartment building, puts in the code to get inside, and then is about to press the elevator button when Hey guys, I honestly think that maybe this whole talking thing is a little bit harder than I initially thought when I decided to do this whole thing. Oh, jeez. She decides to pick up her mail before going to her apartment and then realizes that the elevator is already on its way down. But she didn't push the button. Looking around, there's nobody else that could have done it. So she waits. She looks at the camera and sees there's nobody in the elevator. While she's waiting, she decides to look at the mail that she picked up. Turns out there are 2 wedding invitations from 2 of her friends. I don't know if they're actually wedding invitations. I don't know. I tried using a translator on these things and all they got was attention. Meanwhile, the audience is waiting for this elevator to reach the ground floor. You're using your 5 minutes very well, Mr. Director, sir. The elevator finally reaches the ground floor, and Heather realizes that the elevator is full of these people. And no, I'm not going to name any of these people because they're just passing through. Except for the kid with the bat. I'm going to name him
Gunhead.
If you know, you know. They all start to move aside to make room for Heather so she can join them. She's about to, but then looks to the panel to her right and sees, according to the indicator, the elevator is still coming down. One of the elevator passengers tells her that they're all going down, and as Heather is on the ground floor and there's actually no more down to go, she starts getting the picture of who these passengers are and where they're really going to. So she politely lies and says there's not enough room on the elevator for her to fit in there. And with that, an entire elevator of people shrug and go on their way down. Heather even gets to curiously watch as the elevator goes down, but is soon interrupted by her actual elevator that's come down to greet her. And with that, she hops on the elevator, presses the button to go to the floor where her apartment is, and before the doors close, we get to see this neat little spooky, ethereal version of all the passengers that was on the elevator that was going down. But eventually, the doors close, the elevator starts going up to her apartment, and the scene ends, fading to black. What did I think of the first short story in the compilation? Well, I thought... Oh yeah, one more thing. Every story wraps up with this guitar riff. I don't know why, but I like to think that that's Dante from Devil May Cry busting through the door to deal with whatever ghoulies and ghosts these people are putting up with. With that ends our first story and brings us to our second. Our second story today is from a compilation called Scary True Stories. That's right, this one actually happened to a real person, for real this time. And it isn't embellished in any sort of way, except for dramatic Dutch angles and strange unearthly green lighting, not embellished in any kind of way. I like how at the start of the compilation, we have like all these photographs and a narrator saying about how all these stories are based off of real ones and they only change the names and locations to protect the innocent, just for the story to start with where it happened and who it was happening to. Don't worry, buddy, I'm pretty adept at changing people's names without their permission. But you know what? There's a first time for everything, and this time I don't have to come up with any names. No, that's right. They actually state everybody's names, except for the coach, and, you know, I'm good with calling him coach. The only other thing I'll say about the show in general is that it was clearly filmed on a smaller handheld camera. There's a lot of times when you can just visibly see the shakiness of it, like it was on someone's shoulder. And in addition to that, it seems to have a lot of light flickering stuff going on with it. It's fine whenever it's like in the dark or whatever, but whenever it's a scene around the pool, it's just flickering constantly. And not in like a regular watery flickery kind of way, like a way that actually looks like static or glitchiness on the film itself. And even the way it starts, it's just really, really bright. And I even think I noticed like it jumping from different frame rates from one scene to the next. But with all my nitpicks out of the way, let's just dive right in. And I mean that literally. This is Mary Pooh, who I'll be referring to as Pooh from here on out. And she loves swimming. And I mean loves. She spends as much time in the pool as possible, which means also being on the school's swim team. Pooh is swimming her best when her two friends Neo and Yuri come by to tell her it's time to get out of the pool. And guess what? Yuri just beat the school's high score by 2 seconds. As a matter of fact, everybody on the swim team seems to be improving. Everybody but Pooh, that is. Nero and Yuri want to go to lunch, but Pooh has to stay behind to talk to the coach. And as she strikes up a conversation with the coach, her two friends giggle. You know, in that girly, gossipy way where they're thinking you probably only joined the swim team to have little chats with the coach. But look at them. Can you blame her? Those dark, mysterious eyes, that Black Panther hair, that perfectly chiseled jaw. I, on the other hand, think a man should be weighed by his actions, not by his looks. So unless this guy does something incredibly heroic by the end of this story, he's not going to raise his standing with me. The coach tells Pooh she's doing fine, she just has to improve on these 50 things, and then she'll just start improving too. Neo and Yuri go outside the dressing room to wait for Pooh. They even grabbed her a little drink. See, I'm starting to think that these two friends of Pooh's are like really nice friends. I mean, think about it. Like, they could have just left and gone to lunch, but instead they decided to wait for their friend. And when Pooh finally gets out, they're gonna give her a little tasty drink. It's like a win-win-win for Pooh. Yeah. Pooh's got it good. On their way out of the dressing room, there's a sign that says if you're the last one to leave, to turn out the light. Something that Yuri and Neo don't do. I think because Pooh is still there, and so they're just figuring she'll turn off the lights when she leaves. But when she gets in there, the lights are off, so... Ooh! Do you think it's haunted? I will say this, the exposition on this story is pretty on top of things. I mean, so while Yuri and Neo are outside, they talk about like the ghost haunting there. Like there was a girl last year that died in that changing room, and how also they have a history of pulling pranks on Pooh. So when the bad haunting stuff start happening to Pooh in the changing room, Pooh just thinks it's her friends pulling a prank, which sure doesn't sound like her friends. I mean, these are the kind of friends that'll take you out to lunch and get you a little soda snack, so I don't know what they're talking about with this whole pranking thing. Look, all I'm saying is I don't buy these two as prankster. Not on my Pooh. Anywho, you know the routine by now. There you hear laughter coming from one of the stalls. You go over to one of the stalls, you open it up, there's a ghost standing in the stall. She screams, and then, we fade to black. What do you mean the stall's locked? Well, that's not normal. You mean to tell me they couldn't even afford a ghost? Hey now, you're reaching over that stall. That's not nice to do. What if oh shoot, it's picking her up. That's not normal. There's nothing normal about this.
That hasn't happened before.
Eventually the ghost does let go and she drops to the floor, but not before it scraped up her arm pretty bad. Eventually she does whip her survival instinct into gear though and tries to leave the room, but of course the door is locked. Meanwhile, outside, Neo and Yuri meet up with the coach, and they're all wondering where the heck Pooh is. So they start to go over there to investigate right when the door opens to a screaming and crying Pooh. Now, I gotta say this about Pooh. She's a good actress. The wailing she does when they get her out of that room is legit believable to a degree. I just gotta hand it off to that girl. Whoever played Pooh, you did a good job here. And no, I'm not gonna look up who actually played your part because I can't be bothered. That being said, there are two things that really bug me about this entire haunting. The firstly is, it's just a hand that comes around corners, and it's not even gripping or grabbing at anything, so it's not like actually a useful wandering hand, because usually a good wandering hand will be like gripping towards something. Like when a hand comes around a corner or a wall or something like that, it's usually grabbing that corner to help whatever lingering spirit to shuffle forward and eventually come around the corner. But the hand is just, it slithers around the corner and it just keeps on going. My only other complaint I could say is the fact Pooh knocks over this trash can on our way out, and then when we go back inside, that trash can is nowhere to be seen. My continuity is completely broken at this point. Like, how am I supposed to buy that this story actually happened when your continuity of trash cans is just not preserved? Oh, and I just thought of a new complaint. You know the coach? Yeah, he's gonna go solve this problem. He's gonna go beat up this ghost or whatever. But he makes the huge mistake of dragging the victim back into the room. What if that room's still dangerous? What if, like, they don't know why she's being upset? It could be anything. There could be a murder stab man in there. This man, right here, could be in that room. And yet, like a dum-dum, he drags her back in there to go help him investigate. Now, I know he does that because they need to do the whole scar reveal thing at the end, but they could have him walk back outside to do that. It doesn't need to happen in this room. And another thing that doesn't need to happen is the fact they have this entire expedition dump about them retreading all the facts and the history behind this ghost post that. And what does all this chicanery add up to? A short horror story that I end up actually kind of like. Yeah, the ghost is kind of lame, and everybody except for our main character being the victim, everybody else is just there to be an exposition dump. All the actors do a really good job of just making these people seem like normal, ordinary people. Did it blow me out of the water? No, but it does win me over in degrees, slowly through the course of the story. So that being said, yeah, I really enjoyed it. And I'm looking forward to view the rest of these stories in the Scary True Stories collection. And with that, before we start our third tale this evening, I just wanted to let everybody know this is where the ad break goes.
If I had one!
And with that out of the way, let's dive right into our third tale this evening with the first episode of Ultra Q, entitled Defeat Gomez. Gomez is the name of the monster. We open up on a scene of a construction site where a bunch of construction workers are working on an expressway tunnel linking Tokyo to Osaka, which is actually pretty far. While all this is going on, a reporter named Nita is doing an interview with one of the men in charge of the project. An interview that gets quickly interrupted when, while digging a tunnel, they ran into a tunnel. And this, of course, is bad because the tunnel they didn't know about might compromise the integrity of the tunnel they're now building. In addition to that, they found this giant spherical object made out of material they're unfamiliar with, and if they find any more of them in their way, it could cause problems for their tunnel. So when their tunnel ran into the other tunnel, it caused a cave-in, and nobody was hurt, but one man went mad, claiming there was a giant monster inside of this tunnel. Nita, smelling a front-page story, decides to call the story in about the tunnel running into the tunnel. But his head editor tells him writing "tunnel found in tunnel" doesn't make much sense for a paper. The sentence itself doesn't really make any sense and would probably confuse most readers. And overhearing all this is a photographer named Yuri, and she tells the head editor if she can just take a picture of the tunnel inside the tunnel, they wouldn't need to explain anything. People could just see it. After all, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And with that statement, her editor agrees, and she hops on a helicopter on her way over. The helicopter is piloted by a man named Joan and co-piloted by a man named Ippy. And these three here are going to be pretty much our main trio for this entire series. They're not in every episode, but they are in most. And although that they not typically directly involved with whatever monster of the week that we have to deal with each episode, but they are there to bear witness to most of the things that go on in this show. So I'm just going to do a quick run through of who these people are and what they do. Yuri is our Lois Lane archetype, always going out of the way to try to get into the most dangerous position so she can get the best picture or the biggest scoop, but always ends up getting in trouble and becoming a damsel in distress. Joan is our roguish hero archetype, always going into danger and, coming out on top. And even saving the day every once in a while. And last is Ippy. He's the comedy relief. No, that's it. He's just there to be the butt of everyone's jokes. And with the introductions finally through, they arrive at their destination. As they walk up to the construction site, we get to see two scientist-type guys walking out from the tunnel, trying to explain the whole tunnel inside the tunnel thing. And after some quick-witted questions from Nita, they find themselves at kind of a loss. They can't seem to explain the concept of this entire tunnel inside of a tunnel thing, and Nita takes the opportunity to mock the scientists, saying that not even science can explain the tunnels inside tunnels. And if sane minds can't explain it, maybe the madman was correct, and maybe there is a monster in the cave. And with that, Nita meets up with the rest of the gang, while Yuri is already taking photos of the spherical object. A boy named Jiro walks up and tells them it's a fossilized egg of an ancient prehistoric bird. All the workers at the worksite mock Jiro and say that he's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs and doesn't know what he's talking about. Maybe he's mad, like the madman they got out of the tunnel, screaming about his giant monsters. On hearing that, Yuri decides that they need to go inside and take a picture of it if there actually is a giant monster in there. Joan volunteers to go with her. Nita decides while June and Yuri are going in to look for giant monsters in the cave, he's going to follow up this fossilized egg theory that Jiro has. So Nita, Ippy, and Jiro go over to a temple where Jiro has told him that it has all these ancient scrolls, and that's where he learned about the bird monster. They find said scroll and it depicts two monsters on it. It has the bird Jiro was describing earlier, but it also has a second monster on there. The scroll describes these two as mortal enemies, and they will fight to the death whenever interacted with each other. And finding out, the scroll also says that the bird is a good guy, and the other monster, a bad guy. And their names are Lytra and Gomez, respectively. With this newfound knowledge, Nita realizes that there is actually a giant monster in that there cave inside of a cave, and he's got to warn Yuri and Joan. Meanwhile, back in the cave, Yuri and Jun meet Gomez, and he is not happy. And for the record, Gomez is just a reused Godzilla costume with a whole bunch of moss and an added horn and teeth on his head. Meanwhile, outside the tunnel inside of Tunnel, Jiro and Ippy try to revitalize this fossilized egg by putting a bunch of fires near it. I don't know if that would, like, defossilize a fossilized egg, but whatever. It works and Lytra hatches out of the egg. It's just a baby Lytra. Ippy is concerned, but Jiro says even a baby should be able to defeat Gomez. And that's a good thing because Yuri and Jun just led Gomez out of the cave. Lytra and Gomez fight to the death. They kind of just double KO each other. Yeah, they both kind of just die. And with that, Nida got his story, Yuri got her photographs, and Jun and Ippy, I guess, I'm assuming they got paid for this? I mean, helicopter flights can't be cheap, right? And with the end of our third tale, I would just like to congratulate you. You got through the first episode of the second season of Basement Dweller. But before I'd go, I'd just like to ask that you give us some feedback over here on the channel. Please, like, subscribe, and all that regular stuff. But more specifically, I'd like to see comments talking about whether you guys liked or disliked me adding an older story to the roster. Well, because it's old, it's black and white, and I thought maybe that might be a turnoff to some people, but because Kevin was doing The Blob and House on a Haunted Hill and older stuff like that, it kind of gave me permission to talk about older things as well. Also, in addition to that, I also decided to record these sets of episodes without any subtitles in the recordings this time. And I'd like to see if you guys think that's better or worse. Do you guys actually like seeing subtitles in my recordings, or would you like to avoid that at all costs? I think it makes the footage look a lot cleaner without them. And also, in addition, you're not fighting for space if you're watching this video with closed captions on. But if you could just give me feedback on those things, or if you have any other additional general thoughts, just comment down below and I'll read them and adjust accordingly. I am not afraid of taking suggestions after all. And even if you have something you'd like me to do a review on or discuss and just in general, go ahead and put that down below as well, just so you can give us some ideas on what to do here on the channel. With that, I guess I'm going to bid you all to have a very good night, even if you weren't planning on having one.
Well, you're going to need power for that imager in the cleft. Try releasing the brake on the windmill first. Well, you're going to need power for that imager in the cleft. Try releasing the brake on the windmill first. Well, you're going to need power for that imager in the cleft. Try releasing the brake on the windmill first.